Alright gang, so looking at this now, we have the reveal for Renegades and Ashen Iron. It just dropped, and there's a whole bunch of stuff to react to. First of all, we know a bunch of stuff about our new enemy faction that we're going to be facing in Renegades. We know a bunch of stuff that pertains to the Star Wars side of things. I just want to go ahead and really briefly replay a section where it talks a little bit more about the story side of everything to do with Ashen Iron. So let me go ahead and play that back for you super quickly.
We begin in the shadow of a prophecy that says our end is already written. It's here we draw a line in the sand, where we start the long journey to fight our fate. In Renegades, Guardians infiltrate a criminal underworld to save a friend whose past has caught up with him and disrupt the rise of powerful new enemies. In special collaboration with Lucasfilm Games, we took inspiration from Star Wars to craft a one-of-a-kind Destiny story. Renegades redefines what an expansion can be. It brings the grit, guns, and glory of a space western to Destiny. But Renegades isn't just about power. It's about what you're willing to risk to change the future.
The folks at Lucasfilm were such great collaborators. They understood that in order for this to work, we had to find where the Venn diagram of our two stories meet. Themes of underdogs rising up against something much larger than themselves. Themes of hope. Those little places in that Venn diagram were the ones that really helped us find the story that we want to tell together.
If you look at Star Wars and you look at Destiny, you can kind of see that parallel that exists. So for instance, our Dredgen, they're our Sith.
Pretty Sithy.
Yeah, and then you've got the Barrett Imperium, and they are very, very Empire-like. Yes. They have a huge appetite for expansion.
So yeah, here we are. We've got our new faction, the Barrett Imperium. These are Cabal who exist in a very different kind of context from the ones that we've usually seen. In particular, I think this image of the faceplate on this one particularly menacing Cabal is actually very telling, simply because of the fact that the Cabal live in a pressurized world, or a high-pressure world. So whenever you actually see the headshot of a Cabal going off and this big explosion of oil coming along, that's partly because their suits are internally pressurized. So yeah, when you have a pressurized faceplate like that, normally you don't want to expose it to the atmosphere, otherwise bad things happen. The fact that this faceplate on this fella is exposed implies that he's probably one of their leaders, who has a whole lot of genetic modification potentially going on with him. Because yeah, most of the time normally it's either very strong Cabal who are able to do this, or there's something else going on there. You know, take a look at, say, the Consul, Dominus Gaul, even Callus. Not every Cabal has the kind of guts to be able to go ahead and go faceless like this. Also, Holy Lord, that's a menacing visage. The Barrett Imperium as well, I think, clearly feeds into the aesthetic, but we also see whatever the hell this is. I don't know if this ever made it into the actual development side of it, with being like a different kind of enemy combatant, but like it's kind of like a Cabal Gundam, like with whatever's going on there. Also, another very obvious point that was made with all of this in line, our Dredgens are very much like our Sith. Yeah, 100%, this is exactly what was being called ages ago by members of the community. For those of you who do not know, Dredgens are basically Dark Guardians who specifically went and found themselves a bunch of weapons of sorrow, created their own weapons of sorrow through something called the Ritual of Unmaking. In that process, they essentially bind themselves to whatever that weapon is. So it's a very dark process. It follows in the footsteps of a man called Dredgen Yor. There's a lot of lore behind it, but if you ever want to go ahead and learn more about that, look into the lore of Thorn Last Word. Very interesting, very cool there. Also, this will be something we feed into later because it tells us a little bit more about the weapon that we'll be wielding, which is our lightsaber analog, which comes from our Jedi equivalent within Renegades, which is apparently going to be the Praxic Order. For those of you who do not know who the Praxic Order are, we do get to see just a little bit, I think, later in the trailer of a member of the Praxic Order who will be guiding us. I don't know if this is Arnor Mahal. They didn't actually mention if this was Arnor. So, like, yeah, I have no clue on that front. I don't think it is, personally. This character, I don't think, fits the description of who Arnor is, or who they're meant to be. But the lightsabers are known as Praxic Blades. And it does kind of make sense the Praxics are kind of the analog for Jedi. Their entire idea is about, you know, light and dark, yada yada yada, etc. So, the idea of them fighting against evil, not even necessarily on behalf of the city, but just against the forces of darkness, That's very much their entire shtick. They also go to some extremes in order to get that done. It's very much a group that expands as a warlock order predominantly, but is not purely a warlock order. The reason I say that is because of the fact that, if I'm not mistaken, there are titans that have associated with the Praxic Order before. I'd need to double check that, but I have heard somewhere in the lore that that is indeed a thing. Point being, like, they are a far-reaching, very influential order. They've actually done a lot of stuff in the past of the lore. So, for example, the Great Disaster, right? Yeah, that was something which was entirely done thanks to the Praxic Order and those under the Cormorant Seal basically organizing that massive army of Guardians. So yeah, the Praxic Order has a very big place within Destiny's lore, and seeing them expanded like this is very, very interesting. Not to mention there are some, like, peak characters. Arnor Mahal and Ariana 3 are both very famous Praxic warlocks. So yeah, very, very cool stuff. Anyway, let's go ahead and just resume where we were previously. We've also got this very cool Taken Sarlacc pit looking thing. Not sure what the hell's going on here, but we'll jump back in with this.
Since our Dredgen, they're our Sith.
Pretty Sithy.
Yeah, and then you've got the Barrent Imperium, and they are very, very Empire-like.
Yes.
They have a huge appetite for expansion.
I think of the Praxic Order. There are Jedi in this release, and they are very focused on order and law and understanding that there is a binary in our universe of good and evil. We get to poke at that a little bit in a way that suits our story and our world, while still feeling very much like the inspiration that we're calling from. Edge of Fate leaves us with a really big pass forward into the future. We know of this prophecy now that tells us that we need to bind the Nine or we face extinction. And Drifter was there on Kepler. He saw all of this.
Not running from this one.
Drifter is convinced that there's a connection between the Nine and the rise of this new faction, the Barrent Imperium. He sees them rising at an unnaturally fast rate and is insistent that there's a problem. But the Vanguard isn't listening. They're insisting that he needs to stand down.
So, with the Barrent Imperium being mentioned as potentially being aided by the Nine, we actually have a little bit of lore from in-game, which I talked about in a video recently. Essentially, there was a group of Cabal wearing a unrecognized livery, who we now understand is probably agents of the Barrent Imperium, and they were basically going and finding Xur. They jumped Xur, and they had that moment where they mugged him. They stole a bunch of paracausal weaponry from him, but in particular they also stole his flight records, and then they communicated with something using those flight records 9 times. And yeah, from then onwards they started doing a whole bunch of stuff, which was kind of worrying. They started gathering things, generally. So yeah, the entire movement of this faction also seems to have kind of massive underlying, like, production effort that is aiding in its movements and just the deployment of weapons generally. Yeah, there's a lot going on with the Barrent Imperium, where clearly they've got a lot of backing and they've got a lot of power to them. As far as the member of the Nine in question, I don't know who it would be, but if we're going to Mars at some point in this, 4 is definitely involved. That being said, 4's lore is a little bit different from everything that is kind of around the Barrent Imperium. Also, I don't know if it's Baron or Barrent. I'm sure someone in chat will be able to tell me. But yeah, the entire point is 4 is actually probably looking to assist us and help us. If the Imperium are communicating with a member of the Nine, I don't think it's going to be 4. I think it's much more likely that it's going to be one of the outer orbits, most likely, actually. Whoever that ends up being, I don't know. But it's going to be a very interesting thing to see, because this is some of the inter-Nine politics that's starting to weave itself together. Anyway, let's go ahead and keep listening to what Allison and everyone else is saying.
The cool thing about this criminal underworld is you and Drifter and your crew, you come in at the bottom, and at the top, there's the Barrent Imperium. You need to work with all these crooked criminal syndicates in between, earning your power, building up the notoriety, getting the gear that you need to take down that powerful Imperium at the top.
There's a weapon that the Barrent Imperium have made, and we need to be the ones to destroy it. And we're not going to be able to do that unless we work with exactly the kind of people that we normally fight. So we're going to head out to the lawless frontier, and one job at a time, we're going to take down the Imperium.
Okay, so really quickly before we go any further, I'm just going to see if I can scroll through and find the exact image where it was being shown off. But yeah, here it is. There we go. Haha, big ol' laser weapons and Star Wars. The Barent Imperium, they have some kind of Death Star by the looks of things. That's wild. That's very much in the vein of Star Wars. Most Empire-like factions have some kind of massive superweapon, so this is not at all surprising. It's very much in line with things. Also very appropriate for Cabal lore, because if you guys remember from all the way back during the, the Red War itself, the beginning of Destiny 2, they brought the Almighty to the system. And that is literally a superweapon that kills entire star systems. So, yeah, this is not only something that's very appropriate for Star Wars, it's also something very appropriate for Destiny. It fits very well within the thematics of everything. For what the actual weapon is and what it's using, I have no idea here. The red energy that's emanating off of this could mean anything. I see some people sitting there and saying nightmare energy in the chat, but I don't think it's necessarily that. I think that there is a lot of stuff that it could be, but it's way too soon to go ahead and nail down anything on any of that in particular. I'd be very interested to see which of the Scions are involved with a faction like this, because there are Scions that have tried to use weapons of mass destruction. In particular, I'm thinking of Amtek, who was the one who tried to drop the Almighty on the Lost City. So yeah, it's very, very interesting to see all of this. It looks like our old Tower 2. It kind of does, but this clearly seems to be some kind of facility or space station. I'm not sure which. It'd be very fitting for it to be a space station. But yeah, this is also of incredible importance to the story of the Nine going forward, because of course the Nine are tied in with the gravity of planets, and if you destroy a planet, like as what happened to Thea in the lore, then yeah, you're definitely looking at killing one of the Nine. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the aim of using this weapon was to destroy, say, Mars, right? I think that's probably going to be one of those moments at which we need to interject on behalf of Thor, who is tied to Mars. So yeah, very interesting to see on that front. Let's go ahead and keep playing this, just so that we can catch up.
The Barent Imperium have made, and we need to be the ones to destroy it. And we're not going to be able to do that unless we work with exactly the kind of people that we normally fight. So we're going to head out to the Lawless Frontier, and one job at a time, we're going to take down the Imperium.
Yeah, so Lawless Frontier. Really quickly, this is important to highlight because this is one of the many areas of Mars that we're going to be going to. However, the Lawless Frontier is also going to be based around Tharsis Junction, which is an area in Destiny that is a very old school callback. This is somewhere you could explore in Mars, the destination from Destiny 1. Like, it is literally one of the original pieces of Destiny concept art too, but it has now been reformulated. It's very much been made into the kind of Mos Eisley of Destiny in that sense. But it does make sense. Within the lore, there's a lot of criminal gangs that have started taking up their roots within the area around Tharsis Junction. There's a lot of interesting stuff there because there were lots of factions milling about in that place well before the time of Renegades. So it does kind of make sense for there to be Cabal remnants, for there to be some Fallen because House of Wolves survivors might have been around there. Like, this all is completely within the realm of everything. There is some stuff we're going to talk about in a second with one of the factions that I really want to stop and pause and talk about, which is much more to do with the Vex here in the criminal underworld section. However, there's also the Frontier, right? The criminal frontier is more than just Mars. It is Mars across various different locations, and it's Europa, and it's Venus. And in all of those instances, you're going to be jumping in and performing contracts for the various criminal gangs that you're going to be working with. But yeah, I'll just go ahead and let this roll on a little bit more.
The Lawless Frontier is filled with big, chaotic, cooperative activities. You're going to choose the job, you're going to choose which renegade abilities you're going to take into those jobs, and then you're going to drop into the action with your team, smash up those objectives, get as many riches and treasures as you can, and then get out or die trying.
To do that, you're going to go to the Lost Frontier holo map. You'll see Mars, Europa, and Venus with swamps that are very reminiscent of Dagobah. There's some hints of Hoth in Europa, right?
Yeah.
For fans of both Star Wars and Destiny, like Mars, which is some pits that are very reminiscent of Sarlacc pits, and you don't want to fall into them, you'll die.
These are Destiny locations. It's just we're taking inspiration from some of these iconic places in Star Wars.
Super quickly, ooh, yes, also, take a look at the sail barge. That's very cool. Yeah, I wanted to go ahead and just take a look at one of the shots back here. Yeah.
Taking inspiration
Yeah, so this is something we're going to see more of. This is one of the Barrent Imperium's walkers, which of course, very ATST vibes. Does also make a ton of sense if this is a highly militarized Cabal faction, but I'd love to know what's going on with these in particular, because this is a new combatant that we're going to get to face. We also get to pilot these, apparently, which is going to be very, very cool. Just figured I'd go ahead and point that out while we've got a moment. Also, ooh, yes, you can actually see one of them here fighting along. Wanted to go ahead and highlight also the quote-unquote Sarlacc pit was being talked about. The reason I want to point out the Sarlacc pit here is because this is very Taken energy, and it looks very much like more stuff to do with the Lord of Every Nothing. This is all the kind of tentacles and nonsense that we saw on the Dreadnought. As for why it's sinking into the ground here, I don't know. As I'm sure many people will point out, this also looks very 9-ish, but I don't think this is anything to do with the 9 per se. We'll have to go ahead and wait and see what's going on there. So, yeah, 100%.
Within these activities is we want them to be highly replayable. Along the way, we're going to throw a bunch of curveballs. You might run into a missile tower that's trying to take you out from halfway across the map. And you have to like divert and take it out, and you get some extra credits out of that. Defeat your boss, get to the exfil with whatever time you've got left. Call your ship in. All hell drops in on your head from the Cabal. Your ship flies in. You hop aboard, and you've got to exfil.
Over the course of the campaign and deep into the post-game of Renegades, you're going to be unlocking and earning a bunch of different Renegade abilities.
We've got things like airstrikes, Cabal drop pods, vehicles like the Cabal walkers, interceptors, swoop bikes, turrets. We've got 9 abilities, 7 upgrades. There's a ton of stuff that you can bring in and just change how things play.
It's like a tech tree of options.
It's like a whole tree of options across support, defensive, and offensive abilities. So the player's going to have a lot to play with here.
The Lawless Frontier isn't just about raw power. It's about influence. Shady backroom deals, working for these powerful syndicates and against them at different times. And all of this takes place at the heart of the criminal underworld and Tharsis Outpost.
So yeah, this is more of what I was talking about with Tharsis. We'll go ahead and play this, but in particular, I do want to go ahead and just jump through and point out some of the various criminal gangs, and in particular, these guys, Tharsis Reformation. In fact, we'll go ahead and just jump through to the bit where it explains each of the factions.
And Tharsis Outpost.
The Vanguard have been preoccupied. They've been off saving the world, and they haven't been looking at Tharsis. It's changed a lot since the last time we were there.
It's now this thriving black market, this criminal underworld. Tharsis Junction became Tharsis Outpost. If you have an unsavory job that you need done, you can find it at Tharsis Outpost.
Tharsis Outpost feels appropriate for both Star Wars and for us. When we looked at Mos Eisley as inspiration, we knew that we could play in that playground in a really fun way. From the ghosts that you'll see floating around to one Eliksni with all 4 of his Eliksni arms shaking up drinks. We took that inspiration and we found the Destiny spin on it.
I saw some people talking about how this was potentially a Siva splicer kind of Eliksni here, where it's got kind of the splicer tech to it. I don't know if I buy that necessarily. The arms certainly give splicer, but this does also look like it could be a low poly render of anything. Worth pointing out though, I think. This is something to go ahead and look into. However, there are 3 big factions that we're going to hear about in just a sec, so let's jump on in with them.
Criminal syndicates have moved in.
You're working with the syndicates. You are building your notoriety with them.
The 3 different syndicates that we created, we're going to be dealing with. The Pikers are Eliksni. They're kind of like an anarchist biker gang. Unlike other Eliksni, they're atheists. They don't worship machines. They follow relics. We've also got the Totality.
So, yeah, the Pikers being atheists is actually a really big deal in Eliksni society generally. And that kind of explains why they can maybe even be a biker gang. In most of those instances, it means that there's a very loose hierarchical structure to it. I also love how they've gone completely out of the box with all of the sort of graphical motifs that they've got all over the armor. They've completely abandoned the old house structure. And the reason that matters, I think, is because the old house structure for the Eliksni is mainly built around the triad at the very top, with the Archon, the Kel, and the High Servitor. And of course, 2 out of those 3 are now kind of redundant for a group that is atheist, as the Pikers is. So if you're looking at this through that lens, yeah, it makes a ton of sense why they're abandoning a load of those old sort of hierarchical structures and going a little bit more out there and a little bit more crazy with their aesthetic. Also, this is just a really cool looking take on everything. I think that this is a very weird looking load of Elixir for all of this, but it's such a neat little push. It's not a huge push, right? Because this is very much reminiscent of things that we've already seen in game. However, you know, little bits and pieces can add some flair like that, and I do like what they're doing with it.
The Totality Division, a subsect of the Barrent Imperium, they're run by Scions, and their enforcer Rao is going to be the leader of this group.
Yeah, the Totality Division is giving me, ironically, given the name of the last one, is giving me big vibes of the Pikes Syndicate from Star Wars itself. Predominantly because of the whole thing of it's run like Scions, and I feel like their aesthetic kind of merges together a little bit there, which is kind of cool. For them being run by Scions, it makes sense as to why they have a division from the main group of the Barrent Imperium. The reason being is because the Scions always follow their own agenda, and it's probably one of those moments at which we're going to be looking at something, where there is just a lot more focus on the Scions as a faction generally. I don't think that it's going to be purely represented by Scions, of course. The Scions are mentally very capable, but they do often need muscle to help them accomplish some of their objectives. So yeah, very, very cool. Ontos saying it's very Crimson Dawn-esque. Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, no, 100%. Feels very Crimson Dawn indeed. Oh yeah, and then there's of course this last syndicate, which we'll go ahead and show off in just a sec.
And we've got Tharsis Reformation. They are a breakaway group from Maya's Vex. They're starting to think for themselves and figure out what it means to be an individual.
This is something which is very new, very developing lore. So, there's 2 things you should take into account here. Basically, if you're looking at the Vex generally, they do not have independence. However, when Maya used the Echo in order to give them independence, they were all capable of 3 thought. As she started to lose control over the Echo a little bit, and as some of that started to wane, you now have a bunch of independently minded Vex. And that's a really cool change for the universe of Destiny, because now we can actually have Vex characters. That is something completely new, which was... I don't think they were going to develop it this quickly and in this direction, but it's very exciting to see that that's even a thing. This means that we can actually finally have individual Vex that have motives, and are doing things that are different from the main collective, which I think has always been the weakness of the Vex. They have never been individuals. They've always just been this formless, characterless mass, where you're dealing with the Vex at large, or a subsection of the Vex that is aligned in this particular way, and you've never been really dealing with a whole bunch of other stuff where you have individuals with goals and dreams and aspirations. So yeah, very interesting on that front of things. The Reformation also gives us an indication of what might be going on with the Echo itself, because Tekhal, who is the personality within the Echo of Command, was kind of encouraging the idea that the Vex weren't tools as Maya saw them, and that they were individuals. So yeah, there's some fascinating stuff going on with them in particular. I'm very interested to see how this develops, because inevitably I think we're going to have some cool Vex characters that emerge from this as a result.
They're starting to do crime. They're wearing clothes.
Crime and wearing clothes are what all individuals do. We need to have new people to fight and new people to root for. And this was our opportunity.
But the heart of the Renegade fantasy is not just surviving the lawless frontier. It's garnering influence and building your power so that you can bend it to your will.
In the end game, we get the best weapons, the best armor, the coolest exclusive cosmetics. You're going to need to work with the syndicates to increase your notoriety by completing jobs successfully alone or with a crew, and then doing so you'll unlock our highest risk, highest reward jobs, and at the same time you're going to have the ability to do a special job that'll take you off planet to the dungeon.
So, it looks like our dungeon... I'm not 100% on this, but if I'm not mistaken...
To the dungeon.
This looks very Venus to me. This looks like a very swampy area, which implies to me this is either Venus or maybe at a push Savathun's throne world. It is possible there are a few other areas this could be. You could see this being on Earth. We could be visiting an area of old Chicago that is very overgrown, where the city itself is kind of parted entirely. But I think the most likely outcome for all of this, especially considering that it's connected in the story, is definitely Venus. Also, the fact that we have a Cabal dropship that's loaded us in there that is a different livery from Keitel's the Red Legions, by the looks of things, I think this means we stow away on board a Barrent Imperium shuttle in order to get here. Really quickly as well, pyramid architecture. This matters, of course, because the pyramids are a major source of power and, of course, are linked directly to darkness. This is very big Savathun's Throne World Sundered Doctrine vibes, but, of course, Savathun would never allow any Cabal to get this close and deal with all the stuff. So yeah, this would be, this feels as though it's Venus. As for what's going on inside here, I imagine that this deals with the central storyline plot point that is likely to be something to do with the Renegades Dredgen. Whoever that ends up being, we'll go ahead. I know that someone said that there is a, the name of the Dredgen is on the Bungie page. We'll check that in a little bit, so don't worry, hold your horses on that one. Expect this to be a little bit like a dungeon where we go into a Sith temple. I'm very excited to see what they do with this. This is exactly the kind of cookery that can happen when you merge Destiny and Star Wars. A Sith temple with the kind of aesthetic of the pyramid statues also makes a ton of sense. Now, there is the other point to be made where we could actually be seeing something a little bit different. The reason I say that is we've just had Sundered Doctrine only a few months back. And Sundered Doctrine, yeah, that was also within a pyramid. It copies a lot of the similar aesthetic. So I imagine we'll be seeing something that's a little bit more than that. I think this may be kind of the prelude to everything. And who knows what goes on from there. Not sure. It's going to be a very interesting time.
And you'll also unlock Invasion.
That's right, Invasion is back. But this doesn't work like Gambit. It's opt-in, the invader has some initiative when Invasion begins. This is more strategic.
You scan the battlefield, and you're like, okay, is this the right time for me to take the shot? And what's the right tool for me to do it? Do I use an airstrike or a vehicle? Do I use a Cabal walker?
Just watch out for that double cross.
Yeah.
Renegades marks the Guardian's descent into a criminal underworld. A world of shadows and syndicates, where your light and your choices will cut a path forward. You'll fight dirty, break the rules, and build a hardened crew that can take on any job, standing up to the most ruthless syndicates in the system. Even in the darkest corners of this world, there's still a glimmer of hope. Guardians will have...
Really quickly, I'm just going to go ahead and give you guys a better, closer look at the saber of all things. By the way, this is, within Destiny parlance, is known as a Praxic Blade.
Glimmer of hope. Guardians will have to find their own...
Very cool for the sake of the thematics of it all, but also, I think it's just really important to acknowledge the fact that they've said that this will be something you can customize, both in terms of gameplay and aesthetic a whole bunch. Whether that means we can customize just blade characteristics and color, or whether there's actually a bunch of stuff we can do to the hilt, as you would expect from something like Star Wars Fallen Order, that's not clear. But hopefully we'll be able to choose a whole bunch of stuff about it. They will absolutely have the sound design nailed down, because, I mean, listen to this thing. So there, you can see kind of a closer shot at this. It looks as... Take track of this, actually. We've got a hilt here that's kind of like a crosshash texture, and then this bit at the very bottom.
Even in the darkest corners
Yep, pretty sure that's the exact same design. Let's see if we can find another one.
of this world, there's still a glimmer of hope. Guardians will have to find their...
Ooh, okay, hang on a sec. Let's go frame by frame. I'm thinking that's actually pretty similar there to what we've seen before, but hey, you know, it could be also because this might be the same Guardian wielding it? Not sure. Either way, this is very cool looking design.
their own version of balance between loyalty and survival, between power and purpose. Because there's more at play than credits and contracts. Forces are on the move, ones that
I don't know who the hell this is. We have no lore thus far on the Barrent Imperium and who the hell they might be. But man, that is a cool visage for an enemy Cabal leader. Like, look at that. Oh my goodness. That looks incredible. Clearly this is going to be kind of the major enforcer. This is not going to be our Dredgen. This will not be our metaphorical Sith Lord. Gaul 2.0? Yeah, I mean, they look about as menacing as Gaul ever did. Look at his arm. Yeah, I know. Something's happened to his arm. This man has been... he has been screwed up at certain points in time. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
see you not just as a player, but as a piece on the board. To change the future, you'll have to become the one thing they never saw coming.
And there they are. This doubtless has to be our Dredgen, right? I said we didn't see much of the Dredgen in the trailer. Yeah, this is the only bit that we get to see, as well as their clash with whoever our Praxic Warlock here is. This is going to be damn cool, I'm not going to lie. I'm really wondering who this is. The only bit that I think from the silhouette that we can confirm is this might not be Janna 14. Let's go ahead and take a look.
Start the engines. Take off as soon as you can.
I want to say that's a masculine presenting character, not 100% sure. It's a little bit hard to see from this distance. That being said, man, this is just wild to see in Destiny. Like, it is so crazy knowing that 10 years ago, 11 years ago, when Destiny 1 launched, one of the first missions that I ever played was the Sword of Crota, of course. That was one of the opening missions for the moon. Not the opening mission, but maybe the second or third one you did. In that moment, me being a little baby warlock and using the Sword of Crota for the first time, it was a very, very cool just moment in the timeline of Destiny, because it was the point at which I was like, oh yeah, warlock satisfies Jedi vibes. Now we literally have Jedi vibes, which is insane. Also, for someone saying this is a KOTOR reference, I think so. I don't want to spoil Knights of the Old Republic, even though that game is quite literally over 20 years old, and if you haven't played it, what are you doing? But yeah, no, 100% this feels like a KOTOR reference, considering the red and yellow lightsabers, shall we say. Like, oh, this looks so cool. So yeah, that is the Vidoc that we got. There were a few other details here and there that we got for Renegades. In particular, I think we get a slightly closer look at the Dredgen in one of the promotional artwork shots. Here we go. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure this is our Dredgen here. We'll go ahead and check the Bungie site in a moment, which will give us a bit more detail. Obviously, this is probably one of their lieutenants, if they are working directly with the Barrent Imperium, which I have to imagine they are. Obviously, this is all of us. Everything going on with Mars and Tharsis. Threshers chasing the Drifter's ship, the derelict here. This is all very cool stuff. This, by the way, yes, Angel, you are absolutely right. Oh my god, it is giving enormous Darth Revan vibes, and I love that. That looks so good. Oh my god. For those of you who do not know, please play Knights of the Old Republic, the original. Do yourself a favor and play one of the greatest early 2000s RPGs ever made, as well as one of the best Star Wars games, but like, wow, this is like one-for-one Darth Revan vibes. That's insane. Okay, give me 2 seconds, gang. I'm going to pull up the other side of things, and we're going to go and look at what's being said over on the Bungie website. Ooh, okay, right, here we go. So, first of all, new story missions. Step into the next chapter of the Fate Saga and forge uneasy alliances that pull you deeper into a hidden world of shifting loyalties and escalating combat. The crime syndicates of Tharsis battle for control, take on high-risk assignments, and use powerful new abilities to turn the tide. And hunt down the acolytes of Dredgen Bale. Complete the pursuit and forge your own Praxic Blade, a powerful weapon infused by both light and dark. So, very interesting stuff there. The lightsaber, the Praxic Blade, is confirmed to be something that comes from the dungeon. Here we go. A lawless frontier calls. An uncharted expanse where power alone isn't enough. Every choice carries risk, and every alliance comes at a price. Navigate a world of shadows and syndicates. Shape your legend through influence and become a force that tips the balance. Also, none of this appears to be loading yet. I imagine that's just my poor luck for everything. But yes, Darth Bale. Sorry, Dredgen Bale. Did I say Darth? Yeah, no. For those who don't know, yes, Dredgen is almost a one-to-one for a Darth that don't know. The Dredgens are basically our Sith. However, the note of hunt down the acolytes of Dredgen Bale, very interested to see what that leads to. Because yeah, that's going to be a very, very cool side of the story that we get to see. Also, I mean, Sith acolytes generally being a thing within the universe is definitely something that could be really cool. Here's an interesting thing as well. If it's pyramid tech, do we reckon that it's actually going to be the Baron's Imperium that we're facing in this, or do we think it's going to be something more along the lines of Hive or Dread or Scions? Very interesting to see. But yeah, no, this is going to be really, really interesting. I'm very, very happy that we know the name now, Dredgen Bale. I'll need to go ahead and search for that, but as best I know, that's an entirely new name in the lore. It is not who well, it might not be who I thought it was, which is Janna 14, who is the creator of the Osteostriga. That being said, who knows? It's going to be really interesting as well to see what's going on there, because Dredgen implies that they've gone through the Ritual of Unmaking, and again, they have a Weapon of Sorrow. Maybe it's the case that they've been able to take the designs of a Praxic Blade, and then because it says a weapon infused with both light and dark, this is kind of our primer and our prompt to say that yes, he has been able to make his Praxic Blade into a Weapon of Sorrow. Which, if that's cool, man, that's so awesome. Anyway, let's jump back in really quickly, and we will talk a little bit more about stuff that's going on with Ashen Iron, because that's the other big thing that's coming along. There's a bunch of sandbox tuning and things that happened as well. You know, that's awesome. Very glad to see that. There's a lot of good dubs that came along with all of this, but Ashen Iron is the next really big thing that I think we should talk about. Let's go ahead and listen to what was being said about the narrative side of things.
This is our new activity, Reclaim. But Jerome, let's talk about narrative. How are things kicking off?
For sure. Well, Maya Sundaresh, the conductor, has somewhat overextended herself on Kepler during the events of Edge of Fate. And she foolishly tried to meddle in the affairs of the Nine and essentially assassinated 3 of the 9, which is the 3 of Earth.
3 being a single entity, right?
Yes, exactly. And that's going to have huge knock-on effects for the people of Earth in physics and chemistry, and we'll hear a lot more about that in Renegades. But for now, Maya is somewhat depleted, right? And she is starting to lose control over her collective. She's starting to bleed individuals at the edges of her collective, and those are the pants-wearing, poker-playing Vex that you saw.
Crime. Yeah.
Exactly. And so she needs to reassert control over her collective. And in order to do that, she needs a signal boost to maximize the power of her waning Echo of Command. And the best tool for that job is, of course, Golden Age tech. And the best place to find Golden Age tech is in the Vanguard Vault, which is why Ashen Iron begins with a defense of the tower from a smash and grab by Maya's forces, both Vex and conscripted Cabal, which you'll learn more about during the season. But that's going to be a start, but not sufficient for her plans. So she will need a fully functional Warsat network to really expand her reach. And there's only one place where you can find that, and that's in the Plaguelands, which is where most of Ashen Iron takes place.
Awesome.
So we've got a lot of stuff going on there. First of all, yes, this is absolutely something that has been going on in the lore. In the background, there are actually observations within one of the lore books talking about how, yes, it seems like Maya's control over the Vex is indeed waning a little bit. It's possible that this was thanks to what she did to 3. After you see the lore tab where it goes over the exact moment of 3's death, you actually see Maya having this crazy point in time where she just doesn't necessarily have contact with Takal, who is inside the Echo for a moment, and we only get like portions of his words back to her, and it's basically saying, what have you done? Why have you done this? What the heck happened? It seems as though this moment has completely knocked the control of the Vex free from her. It is also possible that some of these events are being exacerbated thanks to the events that will go down in the Epic Raid. This may be something that develops later on in the story of this particular update, if that is something that's going on. The major narrative side of things, and starting with a raid on the tower, though, I think this is hinting to something that is conspicuously absent from any mention or word within the actual narrative here, which is SIVA. Like, the term Golden Age technology is being used generally here. It could genuinely just be Golden Age tech, like that is indeed a thing. But we're in the Plaguelands. Finding the ability to make a full Warsat network within the Plaguelands either means doing things within that Warsat bunker, or alternatively it means making new Warsats, and you make new Warsats with, well, amongst many other things, potentially SIVA. So I think that might be the way in which we're looking at all of this. So yeah, not 100% certain on that, but this is indeed something that's been expanded on a bunch within the lore recently, and it makes a whole load of sense that Maya is looking to reinforce her power. The fact that she chose to raid the tower and to do a kind of heist there is really quite telling, though. Because, yeah, all of a sudden, that's a very desperate move of her. It does also kind of show the degrees of power that she's reaching for. It tells us that she's either incredibly ballsy, a little bit like what Aramis was when we first interacted with her, which was not Beyond Light, but was instead the mission where we got Outbreak perfected. Or it tells us that she's incredibly desperate and that she just needs to go ahead and sort all of this out now so that she doesn't completely lose control of her collective.
Speaking of the smash and grab, when players first sign in for Ashen Iron, they're going to see a node that they can launch for the introductory mission. It's not auto-launched. You're going to select it, jump in when you're ready. But after that, you'll hop into Reclaim. Those are going to be some new activities. And Clayton, let's get a quick overview. What are players seeing on the screen?
Yeah,
So yeah, really quickly as well, I wanted to go ahead and just point that out because it does look as though that's going to be something where our initial activity after seeing the heist in the tower, we're going to get taken straight back to the Plaguelands. I would imagine that this is something that introduces things real quick. This is live as I'm speaking of it. We'll go ahead and play this in a little bit, but I would be surprised if this didn't develop in the direction of something is going on with SIVA, something is going on with the technology in the Plaguelands at large. We need to put a stop to it. SIVA not being mentioned is a very conspicuous thing. They even seem to choose areas within the reveal where SIVA is not very prevalent. So you can actually see here, as they go through all of this, the areas that they actually look at. The first bit here is, I mean, lots of these areas are actually very low density of SIVA as best I can see. Yeah, like, you have one exception to that, and that's the launch area back here, which I don't know if we actually find that, but it's the launch area for Wrath of the Machine, which, yay, it's kind of back, except not really. It'll be very interesting to see if that happens. As a quick note for those of you who are in the moment of like, what's going on with SIVA? Didn't we clean it out? Yes and no. SIVA is clearly still there in the Plaguelands. However, what it lacks currently is a mind to control it and lead it. SIVA, as best we know, and maybe this gets expanded on when I jump into Ashen Iron, it is currently dormant, which means that you're not necessarily going to see anything from it being as active as it was back in Rise of Iron. It's one of those moments where if Maya reactivates it, that's where we're in real trouble, and for all we know, that could be something that happens within the case of the story. Anyway, I've been recording this. This is an hour or so long, and I need to get this over to Martin. If you have been watching this video and you're looking forward to everything that's going on with Renegades, with Ashen Iron, you can go ahead and join me over on stream. If you enjoy this content on YouTube generally, just go ahead and hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe. You get those email notifications, you know the deal. Let me know your own thoughts down below in the comments section. For the moment, right now, I'm still cautiously optimistic, but I'm going to be looking out for more things as time goes on. Anyway, thank you so much, and I will see you all in Ashen Iron. Ad Astra.